I don't remember it there.
Yeah, that's the you need the rules. Normal numbers.
That's how it's rotated.
Okay, shall we start? So, welcome to this sixth. We have started. For people who are not aware. So, welcome to this sixth lecture of IT Toolbox. So, as you have guessed already, the theme of today will be PHP. Okay. So, it's part of web prototyping. So if we look at our past, we have done some good progress in IT fundamentals. We are getting to the second one in web prototyping. Next week we will be starting making things. Okay, we'll be looking at mobile apps for the next 2 weeks. But as usual, I would like to give you a bit of feedback. How you are doing and how you can do better. So here are the numbers. So we can see that we have a pessimistic view that around 20 students haven't submitted any of those activities. So these ones, for some reason, that they didn't want to pass the module. Because if they don't submit, they will not get any mark. And we can see that we have a core of students, around 170, which systematically submit the activities, so that's good. Keep the hard work. But also we can notice that in the last couple of weeks, the numbers were a bit lower. Okay, here we were between 70 and 140 after the first week. Now we are only at 21. Okay. Which means that very soon I will not have to give you much feedback, because if nobody submits during the first week, I cannot give you any feedback. I guess it's less work for me, but maybe not as useful for you. Just to remind you that the deadline for activity 4 is next week. Okay.
So today's activity 3.
Yeah.
Midnight.
Yeah. So there was a slight error. I said Wednesday and I gave the date of today. So I'm giving you the benefits of the doubt. So the marks will be published tomorrow. But that will be corrected eventually. And all the deadlines will be on Wednesday at midnight. Okay. So I was really about going to the dark side, exploring a bit these operating systems, to have a view of the machine which is not just of the simple user, but really the IT professional. So I got quite a lot of questions and feedback. So people saying, yeah, it looked tough, but when I started working on it at the end, it was not that difficult. People having a different experience, spending quite a lot of time, okay, but at the end of the process feeling that they got quite a lot from the activity. So they've learned a lot, they've spent time and they've learned a lot. That's perfect. Just wondering why we are looking at this dark side, okay. is it now it's so easy, you have this window-based environment, why do we still go to the command line? So one reason is that we want you to have the full control. When you are using command lines, you can do many things that you cannot do just using the interface. Okay? People who are particularly interested in networking will see that technicians all the time they were using command line, never they use the interface. Okay? I think I will give you an example of how to use a command line today to do something that you couldn't do with the interface. And also you want to know a bit of everything. You know, you are going to be an IT professional, and if one day you work with a client and for some reason they use command line, you shouldn't be running away. You know, you should say, that's okay, I can cope with it. So some people find it easy. Others, yeah, it's work, but at the end I got something out of it. Similar stuff. Someone who, yeah, found, was a bit poetic, let's say. The mentor was really useful. So, yes, I would like to remind you that we have mentors. I introduced them to you a few weeks ago. So please use their services. Okay. Stuck, they will be able to help you. They help you online through a Facebook group, through emails, and they also have surgeries so that you can meet them face to face. Okay. So it's really an important resource for this course. So if you find some activities a bit complicated, please contact your mentors. Some people quite like the topic of operating system and wanted to know more. So I'm very pleased to tell you that there is a second year module on networking and operating systems. So back to command lines next year. Okay, you will have a whole module on that. Some people came to the conclusion that I don't want to use Linux. It's tough, but you will have to. Okay. An IT professional should be able to work on different types of machines. And we have seen a few weeks ago that Linux was one of the best systems for some type of applications. Okay. So you shouldn't reject Linux because you found the command line a bit difficult. And anyway, Linux has also a very nice window-based interface. So a typical Linux user would not see a big difference between using a Windows-based system or Linux-based. Okay. So many people, I think they were lazy really, said, oh, I cannot do question 4 because I don't have Linux. You know, my machine is a PC, so I cannot do anything on Linux, so I don't. Okay. So that's not a very good attitude, first. It's not at all part of the IT Toolbox philosophy. The first one said, I cannot do it, but still I'm studying and I'm going to learn how to do it, but I'm not going to do it. So it's half a step in the right direction, but it's not great. Okay. So that's one side of some people who really didn't want to make the effort, I think. Other people went the other side, say, okay, I don't have access to a Linux machine, so let's install Linux on my PC. Okay, that's great, that's ambitious. You didn't have to do it, but if you have done it, I'm sure you have learned a lot in the experience, so that was good. Okay, so feel free to do that. If you want to partition and having 2 operating systems, that's a very good decision. However, it's not easy, and you don't need to do it. Okay? So, as you may remember, activity 2, I asked you to buy a hosting package, and among the numerous features that mentioned, I said I would like or I want a Linux hosting. Okay, that was one of the requirements. So you cannot say, I don't have access to the Linux machine, because if you passed activity 2, it means that you have a Linux server. You have a login on that machine, you can access it. Okay? So this excuse, I don't have access to a Linux machine, doesn't hold. Okay? If by any chance you got the point for activity 2 and you don't have a Linux machine, go back to me and I will remove the points because you don't deserve it. Okay? So feel free to queue at the end of the lecture to tell me that. Yeah? So there is no excuse. Everybody has access to a Linux machine. And again, part of the activity specs, I told you, connect to your Linux account on your web server. Okay, so that's very straightforward. You have a web server and I know it's Linux. Okay, so there's no excuse. Then some people had acknowledged that they have a Linux server, but then the next step was the issue is how to connect to it. Okay, so they use Qt as I suggested, and they got blocked. For some reason, they couldn't do what I suggested. Okay, so here I'm just copying 5 questions related to that theme, but there were many more of you who couldn't use Qt for some reason. So I'm going to do it live in front of you to show you how difficult it is, because it's really rocket science. So first you need to download it to some website. Okay, here you have a link, but you have many others. And then you get an executable. Okay, so let's carry on from here. So here it is. So I'm on Windows. We all agree I'm on Windows. Yeah. It's not a special machine. I double click. I have a nice little window and ask me for my host name or my IP address. Okay. So the IP address is the unique identification for your PC on the network. Okay. So this PC here has this IP address. Okay. It's written here. The IP address of my server is this one. So I just copy the IP address. You don't have to use the IP address, you can use the host name as well. Qt will understand both. And then, very difficult, so don't miss that step, I click on open. So now we have done the difficult bit, so I can understand that many of you were blocked at that stage. So now I need to log in. Okay, so with your server, you have been provided with a login and a password. So let's go in. Wow. So now I am connected to my Linux server. So if I look at what are the files? So I can see that I have a set of files that I don't really understand what it means, but I also have a directory which is www. What kind of data may I have there? Could it be the files which are involved in my website? Let's have a look. Plenty of files. So images, JPEGs, plenty of files ending with HTML. So it looks that's the files which are part of my web server. Part of these, I have a directory which is called Toolbox. let's have a look. Toolbox. What's wrong? There I am. And I can see some files, something like wobbly.css that we have used in the past. Okay, so that's where the data are. So now if I use a web browser,
You know that TCP IP address you use there?
yeah.
Is that belong to that PC?
No, I've used the one of my web server, of the server.
Servers.
Yeah, yeah. So now if I go here, Toolbox. So here you can see the content when I'm using my browser. Let's compare it to the content that I have in my command. You can see that all the files which are here as well. Okay. So now what I can do, for example, if I want to have the list of my files, I would like to know the list of all the files which are in this directory. How do you do that if you had to use the interface? So maybe you would do a copy of all that, and then you will do a lot of delete, that's something sensible. Okay. If I go there, I can say I want the content of my directory to be copied into a file, how shall we call it, content.txt. Okay, so if I want to see the content, I can use, for example, this command. And I have the list of all my files. Okay? You can see that I'm working live on my website. So if I refresh this page, a new file has appeared, which is called content.txt. If I click on it, I have the content of all my files. Okay? So you can see that just by typing a very simple command, I managed to copy all the title of my file in one file. You couldn't do that using the Windows interface. Okay, so that's very basic, and already I show you that the command line allows you to do some interesting stuff. Obviously, you can do a lot of advanced stuff using the command line. Okay, so now I can close my session. Great. So all the instructions are here. Okay, so
Is that to get, because I was actually struggling with getting Linux on my Windows laptop. Is that?
That's for connecting to your Linux server.
Okay. And have you got a link to, because I don't have access to a Linux computer, so is there any way? Yeah.
Do you have a server?
Alright.
You have access to a Linux computer.
Okay.
So as I said, you can use the IP address, so this set of numbers, or you can use just the host name, so generally the name of your domain, and that will be interpreted by PuTTY the same way. Okay. So here is the detail. For in some cases, your host will not allow you to do that. Okay? Because if you do that, you have complete control on your area. Okay? Means you can break it if you want. Okay? If you delete the wrong files, you know, it's dead. Yeah? So some hosts, which usually are working with people who are not IT professionals, don't give you access to that. Okay, they give you some kind of software which allows you to do some stuff, but which doesn't allow you to break anything. Okay, so if you are in this case, contact them. Okay, they are providing you a service. Ask them, can I have access to my account using Qt? Okay, they will tell you yes, no, or they will advise on alternative. Okay.
I did everything you've just done,
Yeah.
but I still got errors. Like one error was timeout, connection error, timeout, and the other error was related to my public key. So I just couldn't manage to get into my account at all.
Okay,
Would
so
that be a problem? So like, do I have to? Or like, I don't know, do I have to maybe?
so I think in your case, if you think you are doing everything right, I would contact your mentor. He or she will sit next to you and see exactly if there is any problem.
Even I used the party in library and I entered my my IP address and I still got like connection errors like saying timeout.
Okay, so maybe your server was not on at the time, or an error in the IP address, But okay, so plan B. So for people who really cannot do it, okay, because the server, the hosting company doesn't want you to mess with anything, even with your own stuff, okay. So first option is they should be providing you with some kind of software to do some basic file maintenance, okay. So depending on how developed this software is, you may still be able to complete the task, okay? You don't have 100% control, but you may have enough control, okay? So that's the first option. The second option is just ask a friend if you can mess with their account, okay?
That's the best option.
So you need a good friend for that. Third option is to use an online simulator. Okay? So for example, if I click here,
Actually make that the very last one.
okay, when I go to this page, it does simulate the fact that I'm connecting to a Linux server, and now I Linux command, and so you can try the commands and do whatever you want there. Okay, so that's the easy way out. However, I need to give you a bit of insight how I'm going to mark you. Okay. So if you are doing it the hard way, when I will be marking you, obviously I will be more lenient. Okay. So if you're doing the hard way, it's not 100% perfect, you still get the points. If you use the lazy way, which connect to that web page, and if you don't do it very well, then you don't get the points. Yeah, you understand? So that's why really try to do it on your server. Otherwise, go in this order. Okay, try 1 first, then 2, then 3. 3 is really.
You could use VirtualBox or a live USB as well.
Yeah, I mean there are options, and when you speak to your mentors, they will tell you also about different tricks. But you need to understand that the less you do, the less rewarding you will be. Okay? I think it makes sense. So if you are really stuck, use the simulator, but make sure that everything is perfect in your submission. Okay. So I think that's enough feedback. Hopefully that will help most of you at passing this threshold. And now we are going to speak a bit about PHP. Okay? Because I know that some of you have their websites, they have their HTML page, and they are keen to do more, and more. Okay, so when we're starting with web prototyping, I explained there were 3 types of elements on a web page. There is the content, the structure, and the style. Okay? So you already have the basics regarding structure and style. That's HTML and CSS. And obviously that's quite easy, to be honest. Yeah? That's not rocket science. Then regarding the content, you have 2 parts. You have one part which is the static content. So that's the text you are going to enter. That's the images that you are going to add, or the links, or embedding videos. Okay? Again, that's very simple. But as we discussed, each time you go to your web page, you get exactly the same view of the data. So what you want is actually to have dynamic content. Okay? And dynamic contents, you need to do some programming. Okay? You need to use a programming language. That's what IT professionals do. Okay? They do programming. So that's not that easy. And when we speak about web pages, there are 2 main programming languages which are used. I've already mentioned it. There is one which is called JavaScript, that we will see in a few months' time. And there is PHP that we are going to look at today. So we want to create some dynamic content. We want people to come back to your website. Okay, so a bit of history. So we had a guy called Rasmus Lerdorf. Here is a photo. He's from Greenland. So I guess not much cultural activity there, so spending maybe a bit too much time on his computer. And so he was a Perl programmer, so that's a programming language. And basically he had a home page, he had a static home page, and for him it was just a nonsense, regularly going back on his web page and typing everything in a free format. Okay? So he decided to automate the process by creating a tool, a set of tools called personal homepage tools. Okay? So that became PHP, and because he knew that there were bugs in his tools, and also he knew that on his own he was not able to develop a tool which would be doing everything he wanted, he decided to release it publicly, so it became open source, asking the IT community to contribute, Have something great which will make your web pages dynamic. There is a basic list of functions and so on. We need more. Correct the bugs and bring some new functions. Okay? So that was almost 20 years ago. So now we are at PHP version 5.6. Okay? And it has become a standard in a web development. So now they call PHP Hypertext Preprocessor, which the initials are PHP as well. So you have initials within initials, which interesting feature. So it was open source and it's still open source. Okay. So if you want to download it, if you want to develop new function in PHP, there is no problem. Just go for it. Okay. You don't need to do it for this course, but that's an option which is open to you. PHP is great because it's able to communicate with all the main databases. So we will also have lectures on databases in coming weeks. And PHP runs on Windows, Linux, Unix, Mac, everything you can imagine. Okay. And again, it's compatible with most servers. Apache, which is the one you are supposed to be using, but others as well. Okay, so if we look a bit at the usage of PHP, first we can say that it's a nice little project that this Greenlander has started. Okay, in 20 years, now we have more than 42 million websites using PHP. Okay. So it's a very successful open source project, and there are a lot of developers contributing to PHP. People love PHP and want to make PHP always better. So if we look at the latest statistics using technology which is used in order to build websites, so here I have the statistics for the 10,000 best websites, the most used. And you can see that PHP has around 40% of the market. Okay. Then we have ASP.NET, which is around 20%, which coming from Microsoft, obviously. And then we have a few other frameworks like Shockwave, Dreamweaver, and so on. Okay, so, but the message is you have two big systems, PHP and ASP. Okay, ASP is also free, so in that case you don't need to pay to get the privilege to work with Microsoft-based project. And if we look at what PHP used for, again, we can see that it's used for businesses, shopping, technology, adult entertainment, I guess, and other type of entertainment, and education as well. Okay? So, it's used for everything, but you can see that there is a very big strength in business. Okay? So it's maybe the area where...
Because of the database.
Yeah. Each time you have to access web databases, PHP is an excellent candidate. Okay, so what can I say about PHP? Okay, so you have started doing a bit of programming, a bit of Java. Yeah? So you know that Java is an object-oriented language. You know, you have classes. In PHP, PHP was based on what is called a procedural way of programming. So initially there was no classes. There were just functions. Okay? So at the moment you have, in Java, for example, you have a class, and within a class you are going to have functions or methods and data. Okay? Here you don't have the concept. Initially you didn't have the concept of class. You have a set of data and a set of functions, okay? Which means that it's a bit messy, okay? Obviously, since the object-oriented paradigm has proved to be extremely successful, all languages, even all languages, programming languages, tend to add the concept of classes and so on. Okay? So now, in PHP, you can create classes if you wish to, but you don't have to. Okay? So some people will program in PHP using only functions. People will program using classes. And the worst case scenario, some people will have a mix of both. Okay? It's exactly the same story with actually C, C++. Okay? C was the language which was procedural. With the revolution of object-oriented programming, they created C++. So C++ is a C with classes, but you can still program in C++ without classes. Okay? If you write a C program and you compile it with a C++ compiler, it will go through. Okay? So that's why C++ is also a bit of a messy language, because it's not strict about using classes. That's why at university we are studying Java, where there is no option. You need to use classes. Okay? So Java is a pure object-oriented language. Still, PHP, when you look at the syntax, looks a lot like C, C++, and Java. Okay? You have your if statements, your else statement, your while loops with conditions, your for loops. Everything that you may be using in C, C++ of Java, you will get something very similar in PHP. Okay? The strength of PHP is that there is a huge number of libraries. Okay? If you want to do something for your web page, it's likely that the 40 million people who are already using PHP have programmed it. Okay, so if you need something, you just download it, it should be there. Okay, so it's fantastic, you have a huge library. On the other side, it's an open source project. It started as a hack, so it's full of hackers. Okay? So the way they program is not always the most academic way. Okay? It's not always the most elegant. You know, they just want to complete a task and they do it. Okay? So it means that when you are studying a bit of PHP code, sometimes it's a bit difficult. Okay? First, it's not completely object-oriented, and a lot of hackers have written with different styles as well. Okay? It's not one person who created the language. You have a community of thousands of people which have added bits here and there. Okay? Obviously, PHP was created to be working on the net. Okay? It was for updating a web page. So it's working with HTML in a seamless fashion. Okay? It's so simple. I mean, we are going to do it now, and you will have it in your activity. You will see it's just an extension of HTML somehow. And one thing that I've already mentioned is that to run a PHP program, you need a PHP engine, which usually is on your server. It's not on your computer. Okay? So let's go. Where is my page? Yeah. Okay, so how to write some PHP? Basically, PHP is embedded within an HTML file. Okay? So a PHP file is basically an HTML file where you add some PHP tags. Okay? So here I'm going to start with a very basic tag, which gives you the date. Okay? So when you have your web page, you could write the date at the bottom of your page in a dynamic manner. Each time you connect to the page, the date is going to be written. Okay? So there is a function in PHP which is called date. Okay? And according to the number of parameters that you are going to use, you will get either the day, the time, and so on. So let's have a look at an example. Okay, so here is my web page that you have learned to love. Okay, and here I'm calling the function date twice. Here I'm providing some parameters so that I just want to get the day. And here I'm putting other parameters so that I get the whole information. I get the day, the number, the month, the year, and the time at the latest second. Okay? So at the moment it's 4:48 and 23 seconds. If I reload my web page, it's dynamic, so it's going to change. Okay? So now it's 49:22 seconds. And each time I click, it's updated. If I don't click, there is no updating. Because,
can it be live?
Excuse me?
Can it be live?
Can we show?
Can it be live? Like as the second goes on, it changes.
It is live. No,
It's not. You have to refresh the page.
No, you have to refresh the page because the processing is not on my computer, it's on the server. So I have to contact the server and say, give me the PHP, please process the PHP and send me back the HTML page. Okay? Because if we look at the source, we can see that the server is sending me a HTML page. It's hard-coded, the time is hard-coded there, okay? So each time that I refresh, this server is creating a new HTML page specially for me and send it to me, okay? So if you don't refresh, nothing is going to happen, yeah? So that's one of the strengths and limitations of PHP. Everything is done remotely. As we say, one of the strengths of PHP is that since the user is only seeing the HTML pages, they cannot know what is the code I've used. There's no, I mean, they can see my HTML code, but each time I start using PHP commands, they disappear. Because the job of the PHP engine is to interpret these commands and convert them into HTML code. So my code, the clever code, the dynamic code, is secret. So that's an advantage. Okay. Where are we? Okay, so here are the two commands basically that I've used. L to get the day of the week, and here I get a more complex command so that I can know the time, the minutes, the seconds, the year, and so on. Okay? So if you go to this link, for example, to this PHP website, they tell you all how to call the date format and all the different parameters you can have. You can see there are a lot of them. Yeah? So as I'm telling you, now we are dealing with programming. You are calling a function which can have a large number of parameters. You can decide if you want the format to be based on a 12-hour format or 24-hour format. Okay? You can decide how many digits you want for the year. 2 digits, 4 digits, and so on. You can decide if the months should be written as a word or as a number. Okay? So you can see it's a very complex and complete function. Okay, so just to remind everybody, because that's really the key, when you are dealing with HTML pages, you are contacting a server, you are asking for an HTML page, it's sending you back the HTML page. If now you are trying to access a PHP page, the web server is first going to send it to a PHP preprocessor. So it's going to interpret all the PHP commands. So some of the commands will be to fetch the date on the server. Some commands will be maybe to go to a database. Some commands may be to do some calculations. When all those commands have been interpreted, the result is going to be written into a new HTML page. And this HTML page is sent to you. So all the PHP business has disappeared. You are not even aware of it. Okay? Any question on that? Because that's really key. So your web browser doesn't understand PHP. Yeah? Keep that very clear. When you are going to make your activity, you can write as much PHP as you want. You cannot test your PHP code on your machine. It's not possible because you don't have a PHP engine. So what you need to do is take your code, copy it on the server, and then you can test it. Okay? And each time you change your code, you have to change it on the server.
Or you can download a PHP preprocessor.
Or, so if you are doing that once, okay, you have just one activity in PHP, or you don't do much activities, much PHP, that's acceptable. Okay, you are going to write 20 lines in PHP, so copying the files regularly on the server is not a big deal. If you become a PHP programmer, that extra work is not acceptable. So what you do, you install a PHP engine on your own machine. Okay? And it's free and so on. So again, I would encourage you to do it, but it's extra work and it's not completely straightforward. So it's good, you are going to learn in the process. However, if you just want to complete the activity without going into that, that's fine. Write your PHP code, put it on your server, and test it. Okay? Okay, so there are many things we can do with PHP. So we are going to start with the most basic things, which already may make your life easier. So we have seen calling a basic function, such as the date. What you can do also is to use create templates for your website. Okay? And that's what WordPress and all those systems are doing. So what you are usually when you have a web page, let's look at mine. Here it is. If you want to have a web page which is consistent, usually you have a header which is the same on all the web pages, and you have a footer which is the same on all the web pages. Okay? That's your ground. And in the middle, the content is going to change. But you are going to have usually a header, a footer, and obviously you will have a CSS file which is going to give the general style of your website. Okay? So, in order to do that, you could, for each single web page, have the data for creating this bit and that bit. But obviously, when you want to update your web page, you would have to change every single page after the other in order to keep the same style of header and footers. So the way to make it easy is to use PHP. So what you create one file, which is going to be the, so imagine that you have a whole HTML page, and now you have three components: the header, the core, and the footer. Okay? So the header, so that's my complete code, if you want. The header, I'm going to put it in a PHP file called header. The footer, I'm going to put it in a PHP file called footer. And then I will have an HTML page with my content in between the two. Okay? And then what I do in my HTML page, I'm saying the start of my HTML page, I'm just going to grab all the stuff from the header. Okay, so I'm going to include, using the PHP tag, the content of the header.php. Then I have my content, and then I have the content of my footer.php. Okay, so my HTML file will be looking like that. Okay, so it looks like a very incomplete HTML file because there is no tag HTML, there is no tag head, there is no tag body, but all those tags are already in my PHP files. Okay, here I have my PHP file with the type HTML, head, and body, and the end of the tags are in the footer of my HTML file. Okay, so now I have 3 bits. And when I put those 3 bits together, when I go to this HTML page, automatically the material coming from header.php and footer.php is brought together. Okay? So if we go, so here I have my header.php. Here I have my footer.php, and now when I call my page 1, everything is put together. Okay? So it means that now I can have page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and all of them are using the same header file and the same footer file, which means that I will have a nice, consistent website. Okay, so if you are using that, as I said, you have to create the header and the footers only once. You can apply it to all your web pages. It again adds an extra separation between content and design. Okay, and obviously when you want to maintain your website or if you want to redesign it completely, you just have to work with these 2 files. Okay. Or maybe to the CSS file as well. So you have 3 files, but you don't have to worry about the content of each file. So that's the system that, for example, WordPress is using. So again, it's just to introduce you to PHP, because at the moment it's not rocket science, okay? But PHP is first and for all a programming language, okay? So it has many functions. So you can handle strings of characters. Okay, so you can concatenate string of characters. You can do operations of string of characters. You can do mathematical operations on the regular expression. We have seen that we have data function for date and time. You can use files, so you can input data on a file, read a file, all those functions are there. Please. So all these functions, if you are already, for example, a C programmer, you will see that they are very similar. Okay, they are not trying to reinvent the wheel. If there is a nice format for a function in one language, they are going to reuse the same format. So all those basic functions, them in most languages. You have a lot of functions as well for dealing with databases. Okay, and any type of database, you will have some specific PHP functions. You have also some functions for encryptions. Okay, you want to keep your data secure. There are some functions which are available there. And plenty of functions that those hackers have added because they found them useful. Okay? Some people created functions for translating text. So now you can use it. If you want to have a website where the user can choose different languages, you can do it in PHP, assuming that this translation function is good. Okay? I mean, you have used Google Translate, and it's not always fantastic, but maybe useful. One of the functions is called soundex. Okay? It's quite interesting. Is sometimes you are looking for, let's say, the surname of someone. I'm not quite sure how to write it. Do you know how to write my surname?
Yeah. Christopher.
No, that's the first name.
Nebel.
So my surname is Nebel. Okay? And if you don't know how to spell it, there are many options to write that word. Okay? And this function is making your life easy. It kind of understands the kind of mistakes you can make. So if you write my name with a reasonable, quite a similar pronunciation, you will still get my hit. Okay? So let's look at an example. Okay, so that's for people who are into genealogy. Okay, if you want to know about your ancestors. So, for example, if I type my name, it gives me a code. So that's the code which is associated by my name. But all those names will have the same code. Yeah? So if instead of Nebel I type Nebel, okay, which in terms of pronunciation is quite close, I still get the same code. Okay? If I type Noble, okay, again, can be an easy mistake, I get the same code. But if I type something different, like Cobble, I will get something different. Okay? So it means that if you are making a reasonable error on the surname of someone, this function will still be able to retrieve your data. Okay? So when you are dealing with a website like this, where surnames are very flexible, okay, especially in English, that's a great function to have. Okay? So such type of function is available in PHP. So there are plenty of fun or useful functions that you will find there. In Java, you know that you have to declare your variables. You have to decide if they are going to be a string of character, integers, or everything. In PHP, you don't need to. I mean, you cannot, actually. So you are just, when a string starts with the $, it means it's going to be a variable. And if you say this variable is equal to 1980, it will assume that your variable is an integer. Okay? And if you try to add an integer with a floating number, it will assume that your number actually was a floating at the beginning. Okay? So it's extremely flexible on the types of variables. Okay? Which means that it's very easy to make mistakes as well. Yeah? Because in Java, if you try to allocate a number to or to allocate a string of character to a number, your compiler is going to complain, saying not possible. Here it's not going to tell you anything. Okay? So as I say, it's a language which is a bit hacky, you know, quite insecure. It's quite relaxed as well, you know. You don't need to declare all your variables at the start and in order to start programming. Your variables are coming whenever you need them. Okay? So there's some advantages, but also some disadvantages. So here is a small PHP program. Okay? So we are speaking about programming now. So I'm creating a couple of variables. One will have my date of birth. One will have the current year. So I'm using the date function. From that, my program is able to calculate what is your age. So your date of the year of your date of birth minus the current year. And then it's going to do a little processing. If your age is larger than 30, the program will tell you you are not that young. Is lower than 30, it will tell is still young. Okay.
30.
Excuse me?
But it was 30.
30? Why 30? Why not? Yeah. So the problem here is that so I am doing some calculations, which is good, but the problem is that the age is set in my PHP file. Okay? So when you go to that web page, you always get the same results at this stage. So now what we want to do is to allow the user to enter some data. Okay? And according to the data that the user is entering, then your program is going to process them in one way or another. Okay? So let's have a look at this example. My web page more exciting each time we look at it. So now it's asking for my name, my age. I submit the query. So it recognizes my name, tell me what my age is, it tells me when I was born, and it tells me that actually I'm not that young anymore. Okay? So you can see that the result is really tailored to the input of the user. So you really have a dynamic page now. So we come back, so instead of 123, now I can have 15. And it's telling me that I was born in 99 and I'm still a young person. Okay? So as you can see, now we are getting some dynamic data. We are not just calling functions, but the user can enter values. Okay, so in order to do that, the HTML has a tag which is called form. Okay, so it allows you to create a form so that the user can enter values. Okay, so in my case, my form had two values, which was the name and the age. Okay. A submit button. So I am saying to HTML, I want a form. The result of this form, or the entries of this form, I want them to be sent to a PHP page so that the PHP is going to process those data. What are the data? They are something which is of type text. Because here we are in HTML, we are not in PHP. Okay? HTML asks me to put the type of data, so I'm saying it's text and it's a name. And for age, I code it as a text as well, and it's age. Okay? So I am entering the values in the form in an HTML page, And when I press submit, automatically this page is going to be called, and all those variables are going to be passed to that page so that the PHP page can do the calculations. So here is my PHP code. Obviously, it's embedded within some HTML. So here I'm reading the variable which was sent, fname, and I'm reading the other variable which was the age. Okay, so I'm retrieving those variables which were in the form coming from the HTML page. And then I can start to do some calculations. First, I'm retrieving what is the date today. By subtracting the date of today and the date of birth, the age variable, I get the date of birth of the person. And now that, and then I can compare the age with 30, for example. And here I can say, you are young or you're not young. Okay? So that's the actual code for what I've shown you here. I have an HTML page. Okay, you can see it's written HTML.
Could be PHP.
What?
Could be PHP, right?
Yeah. HTML is part of PHP. Yeah.
The page itself could be PHP.
It could be PHP, but in this case, I'm not using any PHP function, so I can keep it at the HTML level. Okay. So I have an HTML page. What this page has as a content, it's a form which allows me to enter two values, a name and an age. And this page has also a submit button. As soon as I press the submit button, I move to another page, which is now a PHP page. And that's the PHP page which is going to process those data, okay, using the code that I've just shown you. Okay, is that clear? Yeah? I mean, all the code is available, so you can do your test. So when you are passing data from a form to a PHP page, there are two ways of passing the data. And we will see the advantage of the disadvantages. So when you are passing the data, you can use either the get mode or the post mode. Okay? So when you are creating your form in the HTML bit, you need to say in which way you are going to send the data. Is it going to be get or post? Okay? Then, when you are going on the PHP side, you have to call the data using the right mode. Okay? So if the data were sent as post, you need to read them as post. If you do one post, one get, the data are not going to be transmitted. Okay? So either you use post and post, or you are using get and get. Okay? Two options. So why are there two options? When you are using get, the data are made visible in the address bar of your browser.
Unsecure.
So it's unsecure. That's one of the thing. So here, let's look at, so that's the first case. I send the data, and in my bar, there is no information about the data, okay? It has been sent in a transparent way. Now, if I'm using the get way of sending the data. Here it is. So now I am entering the data. And I submit. You can see here that all the information is visible. Okay? All the variables that I'm sending from the HTML page to the PHP page are visible. So why that? Is it useful? So are the PHP people crazy to create two modes just to confuse you?
It depends on what you do.
Actually, it depends on what you want to do. Okay? Because the beauty of passing the data is now the data are part of the URL. So I can bookmark that page if I want. So I don't need to type the data again. I just go to that page, whose address includes the data, and I can go back there. Okay? So you don't have to submit. If you go several times to that page for some reason, you can get the result from the data you have submitted only once. Okay? On the other hand, your data are visible by everybody, which can be a disadvantage. Okay? So you have two modes. So the get one, first of all, you have a limit of 2,000 characters. Okay, so that's the limit of the size of a URL. So it's visible. So you shouldn't send anything which is like a password or sensitive data. On the other hand, you can bookmark the page. Okay? So you can retrieve the result of the calculations by directly going to that page without having to write down all the data in your form again. Okay? So for some applications, it's very useful. Okay? Imagine when you are using a Google Map. Okay? You are entering the postcode of the place where you want to go. When you are going to pass this URL to someone, you want the data to be there. Because automatically it gives you the map where you live. It's not giving you the Google map where you have to enter the values. Okay?
Like you.
So if you want to use the post, in that case data are not visible, and there is no limitation about the amount of data you can send. Okay? So depending on your application, you have to choose carefully between one or the other. Okay, so now we are going to look at a final application of PHP, at least for today. We are going to create a web counter. Okay? Because now you have all created a nice web page, and you are all wondering, is there anybody ever going on my web page? Okay, that's a good question. And some web page shows you you are the number 500,000 to reach that web page. Congratulations, you have won a fantastic prize. Okay, so being able to monitor how many people are going to be on your web page is very useful. Okay, so we call that a web counter. So let's look at mine. Okay, so here I have my beautiful web page as usual, and here I have added a line which says that I'm visitor 2096. Okay, if I refresh the page, I'm not 97, 98. That's my way of getting
So you
a
did this 2,000 times?
Yeah. Maybe some students go to my webpage as well to test, you know.
Maybe.
So, or maybe people love my webpage. Maybe it's well known and all those people come there. So it's a practical application. Okay, I've created myself a little function which allows me to count how many times people are loading my webpage. So in order to do that, somehow I need to store this number. Because this I've been counting for years. Okay. So as I said, PHP allows you to handle files. So in order to do that, I need to read, each time someone is loading my web page, I need to read how many times people have come before. Now there is a new person coming, I'm going to increment this number and store it somewhere so that the next time someone is coming on a web page, I can go back to my file, retrieve the latest number, and increment it. Okay, so here is the code. Okay, so it's not a huge piece of code. So first, I am creating a variable with the name of the file where I'm keeping the data. Okay, so if I'm going here, you can see that I have a file which is called a web counter, and I click on it. What will I get? What is there? 2,115. Okay, so it's a very complex file with a lot of data, but still I need that file. Okay. Okay, so I need to create a function, a variable with the name of that file. And then I call a PHP function, which is going to tell me if that file exists or not. Okay? Because if I'm starting to try to do something with a file which doesn't exist, it's just going to crash. Okay? So first, let's check if that file exists. If it does exist, I'm going to open it. And I open it in a way which will be allowing me to read it and write on it. Okay? So now that I've opened it, I can read the data which are in my file. Okay? And I put this number in the visitors variable. Now that I'm reading, it means I've reached the end of my file. So if I want to write again on my file and delete what we had before, I have to come back to the beginning of my file. Okay, so that's why I rewind. Now I increment the number of visitors by 1, and I write in my file the new number of visitors. Now I can close my file. It means that I read the content, I updated it by adding 1, and here I can write on my HTML page the number of visitors that I got. Okay. Obviously, I can only do that if the file exists. If it doesn't exist, it means that I cannot count, and I return this text to the user. Okay? There is no counter for this page. So what is important is that I need to create a file, and this file needs to have the correct right. Okay? We have seen in the previous activity that when you are looking at files, they have different rights. Who can access this file? Who can change this file? Who can read this file? Who can execute this file? So here, I want to allow this file to be read, and I allow this file to be written. Okay? Which means that I'm giving quite a lot of power to the person who is going to be going on my website. Because they can write on my file. Okay? So somehow, if they want to be a bit naughty, they can write what they want there. Okay? So you should give this right only when you are sure that it's not going to do anything damaging. So when I am opening that file, So first, I know that I can read and write on that file. Anybody can read and write. And in this specific function, PHP code, I want people to be able to read, and I want people to be able to write. Okay. So here are all the modes that I can open a file in. Am I open so that I can only read? Can I read and write? Can I execute? Can I only write and not read? All these options are there. Okay? Sounds good? Easy? Yeah? I mean, you can see that there's not a lot of code, okay, it's just 10 lines, but you really need to look at the details of each single line in order to get a successful program. So PHP is really programming. Okay. So as I said, PHP is compatible with many databases. So in this case, I was just opening a very basic file, but PHP is able to deal with complex files, such as databases files, and we will be studying that in the future. Okay. So we will have a whole lecture on databases, and we will have a whole lecture on how to read, extract information, write in a specific type of database, which is called MySQL. Okay. So here you can see the PHP function. They are all starting with the prefix MySQL. So it makes your life easier. And then you can connect to the database, you can select the database, you can do queries, and you can close it, for example. So we will have a specific lecture on that. Once we have had the lecture on databases, we will see how we can access this database using PHP. So PHP has a lot of resources. You can download PHP if you wish to, but you don't have. You have tutorials. You have PHP for programmers, if you want to create your new functions. You have text editors, which keeps all the PHP tags with nice colors and so on. And we have a lot of websites which gives you PHP scripts. So you don't have to write your code yourself. You just download it. Okay? You just need to learn how to call the function of interest, and you don't really care what's happening in that function. You just call it and retrieve the result, and you display that on your web page, for example. Okay? So you need to know the basic of PHP, but then the hard work, hopefully someone has already done it for you. Okay? But obviously here we want to learn the basics, so we are going to do a little bit of programming, like the examples I have provided, and we want to be able to use the work from other people. So that's, in a summary, what there is in activity 6. So your task, if you accept it, will be to create a web page which allows converting units between two different things. Okay? So you can convert miles into kilometers, kilos into pounds, gold into silver, whatever you want. Okay? So here is an example. I have a converter, so I can enter 42 kilometers, and I want to know how many miles is that. It is 26.1 miles. Okay? So it's a very simple application. You can see that the technology you need, I've seen it during the lecture, you need a form where you can enter the value. You need a button, a submit button. Then you need a bit of PHP, which is going to do the calculations. How to convert kilometers into miles, pounds into kilos, pounds into dollars, or whatever you want. Okay? So that's the first task. And the second task, I want you to integrate an advanced script. So you are not going to write it. You are going to go to one of those websites which offers hundreds, thousands of scripts. Pick one you like and add it into your website. Okay? So, for example, you may want to add a calculator in your web page. You may want to add some kind of calendar where here you select your city, London, you click, and it tells you that the sun set 1 hour 15 minutes ago. So now it's pitch black outside. Okay? So you can get with this code your sunrise and sunsets. Okay? So use the links I've provided, use other links, find some PHP function which looks interesting, cool, useful, download it, learn how to integrate it in your web page. And that's it. Thanks for your attention.